Hi there, this is Cece Zach. And if you've worked your entire life, reached this chapter, which I call the third, and found yourself wondering, now what? Well, you are not alone. Because retirement isn't just about what you're leaving, it's about figuring out who you are now and what you want next. This is the Meaningful MEtirement podcast, where we turn uncertainty into clarity and help you create a life filled with joy, fulfillment, and freedom. So let's get into it. I am thrilled today to I'm joined by Taren Grom, co-founder of Pharma Voice and a longtime industry storyteller who has spent more than 2 decades elevating the voices of innovators and change makers across the life science sector, which is where I got to know her. Having built a platform centered on purpose, impact, and human stories, and now evolving her own path, I believe Taren is an exceptional guest who embodies the courage to grow, pivot, and redefine what meaningful contribution looks like in the third of life. So Taren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Cece, thank you so much for having me. And the check is in the mail. That's a very lovely introduction. Wow.
Well, thank you. And there's so much more that I could say about you in so many different ways. And you know, I've just watched you pivot over the last 2 to 3 years, and you have always been authentic, but I've found that you've let go of the past and really have embraced what the future is all about. And I can't wait for you to share the tips and tricks that you've learned along the way. So again, I'm just so grateful for the time you're spending with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I don't know if I have too many tips or tricks, but I did when my third began, and that was quite the transition. When you talked to me about what that meant, I was like, oh my gosh, am I really that old? And I guess I am. I'm ready for my third. So here we go. After a big nap, I said, okay, so now what's next? And it was for the first time in my life that I found myself unencumbered by other pressures. And some of it was from sadness, and some of it, was due to being retired. I didn't retire, but I was retired. And so that was a shift that I had to really work through. And then through some personal things that you alluded to. So I found myself, at the end of all this saying, okay, what do I do now? And that was a big blank, sheet of paper that a lot of folks aren't comfortable with. And even though I started every day of my life for 35 years as a blank sheet of paper, it was very daunting for me as well.
And Taren, if you don't mind sharing with the listeners, you had quite a few life quakes in a very short period of time. And what I mean, or how I define life quakes, are those events that no matter how much we prepare for, it really kind of takes us in a different direction or kind of shakes us to the core, depending on what it is. Would you be willing to share some of those with our listeners?
Sure. Yes, and I like that term, life quake. I think that's a really succinct way of encapsulating what happens to somebody that's beyond their control. So I was, as you alluded to, I was the co-founder and editor of Pharma Voice for more than 2 decades. We sold our company, and I decided to stay on. It wasn't a great fit, and I really, at the time, wasn't ready to move on, as they would say. My life had been like intricately involved in Pharma Voice for those 2 decades. So a little ego, a little like uncertainty, shifting ground, wasn't ready to give it up yet. But after a while, it became very visible to myself as well as to the folks who purchased Pharma Voice that I wasn't really the right fit for their company. And it was okay, fine. And that June, I was let go very nicely, no complaints. And then my mom, who I've been taking care of as a full-time caretaker for her, took a turn for the worst. And within that next 3 months, she was gone. So I lost my company, I lost my mom, all within 6 months. And during that time that I lost my mom, I had 4 other friends lose their parents at the same time, 3 of which in the same week. So it was really hard to comprehend like the grief, because we wanted to grieve for each other. You're dealing with your own grief. And so it was kind of boom, boom, boom. How do you kind of recover from that? Thankfully, I have a group of individuals, of women who are in my life, who really stepped forward, stepped in, and supported all of us, to be quite honest. So there was a safety net there. And this is the same group of individuals who really provided a safety net for me as well for when I was retired from my position. And then, as I said, I took a big nap and said, okay, what's next? And so then I spent the next year kind of, not kind of regrouping. I lived the life of a Kardashian. I was traveling like a crazy person. It was easier to say, where are you than how are you? But it was fun. As I said, it was the first time in forever that I didn't have to answer to anybody but myself.
Wow, and that's a huge identity shift when you're answering to no one but yourself. And for me, all of a sudden, I woke up one day, to your point about a nap, and said, was I really living the life that I wanted to live through all of this? And took a great pause myself to just evaluate what is most important to me. So, Taren, can you help us understand too how you felt when those quakes occurred? Like how, what are the emotions that you felt that this professional identity might not be the same. I am a daughter, but I'm now a caregiver for a short period of time, and then mom passes. Who were you after that, or who
I
are
was
you now?
numb. I
Numb.
was really numb. I have to be honest. So it was so fast. And like I said, it was boom, boom, boom. Before you had a chance to recover from one thing, the next domino fell. So there was not a lot of time of introspection. It was a lot of time of action because it had to go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. So there was, when I think back about it, I was really numb. And I don't know how I did all the things I had to do in that framework of how I was operating. So it was a little bit crazy. And it really took, like I said, a year for me to say, okay, I'm not numb anymore.
Taryn, what did you do to unnumb yourself, to wake you up? Who was the prince that kissed Sleeping Beauty to awaken her?
Okay, so no prince, not a sleeping beauty, definitely not a princess. So that is not in my wheelhouse. But I like I said, I started to travel. I started to think about my health. I started to think about what it was that I want my third to be. So in conjunction with all those life-changing moments or life quakes, I decided I was going to become very selfish. And that was a very new emotion for me and a new place to be and to think about myself in that way. So I underwent a double hip replacement within six
Oh my
weeks
gosh.
that changed my life. I had put my health on hold because I was caring for other people that needed the attention more than I did. But again, there was something, just to digress, there was something that Alex Gorsky, who was the former CEO and chairman of J&J, had once said, that like the planes, you need to put your mask on first before you can help other people. And he had said that at one of the Healthcare Businesswomen Association's Woman of the Year events where we met. And he had said, you need to take care of your health first before you can take care of anybody else. And I didn't listen to him until a year and a half ago. So I finally took Alex Gorsky's advice. But that was life-changing for me as well, because it allowed me to regain movement and mobility and agility in my life that allowed me then to go do things, that allowed me to go on a 17-day safari, African
Wow.
safari. So that would have been unheard of 2 years ago.
Is there, well, tell me, how do you want to live your life now? Since you've taken care of your health and it sounds like you are extraordinarily active and maybe you weren't as active before.
Correct.
Is that a piece of how you want to live your life now? And tell us a little bit more about that pivot.
Sure. Absolutely. Being more active is absolutely part of my new lifestyle. So I am, and people who knew me before are going to be going, who is she and what do they do with her? I am active at least 2 to 2.5 hours a day. I'm either working out in the
Wow.
pool, I'm walking, I'm playing golf, I'm doing something. So, and living in Southwest Florida, I have the benefit of having access to some pretty good weather most of the time. So it allows for a very outdoor lifestyle, which has been terrific. So the next thing on my list to do is I'm going to go jump out of a plane this year.
Are you really?
on purpose. Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Well, when did you make that decision?
Um, Probably 5 years ago that I wanted to do that was one of my goals before I was 65. So this is the year. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to go jump out of a plane with the flying Elvises.
Oh, I love that. The flying Elvises.
Oh, we
Um,
like to call them the flying Elvi. I guess that's plural for Elvis. I don't know, but yeah.
did I ever tell you that I jumped out of a plane?
No, but I can't wait to hear your experience.
It's and I would do it again. I would
Oh,
definitely do it again. I just needed some time in between first jump and second jump, and that was about 10 years ago. So I can't wait for you to do this. And the video you get afterwards is just priceless, priceless.
I think it's kind of symbolic of where I am. I'm taking leaps. I'm taking jumps. I'm moving forward. I am refiguring out what my life is like. And so, one of the things you had asked me in preparation for this is what would I have told myself 10 years ago? And 10 years ago, I didn't think I'd be retired at this point. So if I were to go back, I would say, have a plan, have two plans, have any plan at all, just have a plan. And I didn't. So I had to kind of figure it out as I went along. And I'm not done figuring it out. There's more things I want to do. There's more things I would like to get involved in. I'm not done yet. I think at this point, I am now ready to and still want to give back. So I'm doing things in my community. I'm involved with some committees here. I am looking at other organizations where I can lend some of my times, talents, and treasures, as my dear friend Liz Kay likes to say, and figure out how I can continue to give back.
What have you learned about yourself through this transition?
That I am just as resilient as I always thought I was. So, not much can knock me down. I get stunned sometimes, but I'm bounce back pretty fast. And to me, that's always been one of my positive traits that I have. And so I'm very happy to know that that's still intact.
And you are so resilient and just an amazing role model for so many of us that know you, that come from that industry. And knowing that you aren't done, knowing that you have a lot more to do, what are you doing to plan for this or to find that niche that you would like to, jump into and give back? And you've mentioned quite a few things locally, but I know you well enough that that is the tip of the iceberg with you as to where you may want to go and what that may look like.
Well, I'm having a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, and I would say mostly women, to be quite honest. So when I left Pharma Voice, I knew that there would be some time of, the emails would not come in, the phone would not be ringing, but I really wasn't prepared for the total silence. And that was shocking to me. And the people who did reach out were the women in my group, the Lori Cooks, the Eve Dryers, God bless her soul, the Wendy Whites, the Liz Kays. So that was something. So amongst that time of, the quietness, it really was those women I had just mentioned who stepped forward and said, hey, would you like to work on a project here? Would you like to do something there? Leah Carey approached me. We put together this podcast idea. So we were thinking about that. So there's been a lot of women who I've been friends with for a number of years, who we've been colleagues. We've worked together for the HBA, the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association. So we've kind of coalesced around some ideas. But now I'm ready to do some more stuff. And some through that is, again, through a number of conversations, reaching out, working with the WBL, and seeing where I can, fit in someplace. And I'm not in any hurry to do a lot of it. And I certainly do not want a 40-hour a week anymore, nor a 60-hour week or anything like that. So it would interfere with the golf.
Love that. I just would have never thought of you as a golfer. So I love that you are a golfer. And tell us a little bit more about you testing waters in different area and not just jumping in. So how are you reserving yourself? Because I know you, because all of these ideas are brilliant. They're coming from your closest friends and you trust and believe in them and you want to jump in. But tell me a little bit about how you are taking your time to evaluate what you do put your time and energy in and why.
Again, it's that selfishness about it because I am now protective of me and my time and my resources more so than I ever have been before. And I think that's really important because, as you said, I'm a, I'm a 100% person. I dive in and I give it all. And I found that that's a good way to lose yourself. It's a good way to disappear again. It's a good way not to continually test those margins and those boundaries, because otherwise you get enveloped and you get swamped, and then before you know it, your time is gone again and you are now 100% immersed, for me anyway, in something that sounded like good, but now I'm committed to it and I can't get out of that commitment. So I think it's really important to test those boundaries. um, First make those boundaries and then test those boundaries to make sure that it's the right fit. And you can't say yes to everything. And I have also learned that no is a complete sentence. It works.
I love that. I am going to quote you on that one, no being a complete sentence. And actually, it's going to ring in my head because I need to be using that more often. Um, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, and then kind of weave it into you moving forward. And you had mentioned that when you were going through these multiple life quakes at once, and you were trying to figure out who you are, what you're going to do, and maybe even rethink your identity. You had mentioned that your ego was involved. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your thoughts around your ego, and did it shift at all as you're moving into this third?
Sure. I think that anybody who holds a position of, you're talking to a lot of CEOs, CFOs, C-suite folks, and I never considered myself a C-suite person, but I just, my identity was so tied to Pharma Voice for so long that to step away from it was like, well, then who am I? If I'm not Pharma Voice, I'm just Taren Grom. And I guess, and that's okay. Being Taren Grom is just fine. But it took a while to detangle all of that in my brain. And I really wasn't ready to, because it just didn't feel right. I was not even 60. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to figure this out. And as I said, I considered, if you asked me 10 years ago, I would still be working. And so I never thought I'd be at this stage in my life, this early in my life. So that was an issue for me.
Well, it's an issue for so many people, and it was a big issue for me. And it took me a heck of a lot longer than 5 years, which is why I'm investing in helping people transition into their third, because I struggled a lot. And I know it was my ego, but I never identified it. And I think that's what is so refreshing about what you just said, is that you identified it and you immediately said, all right, it's time for me to transition. And I've done some research in the field of transition coaching, and I've become certified as a specialist in this. And what you've demonstrated is that you've gone through the curve, the three phases of a transition so seamlessly and very, very efficiently. And the first is around, there's an ending, right? And there was an ending to your professional identity with Pharma Voice. There was an ending as, at least in this life, being a daughter. And then all of a sudden you get thrown in this messy middle, which is that time that you took a nap. And it's such a beautiful way of describing what the messy middle is you're just taking a little snooze. My snooze was a lot longer than yours. And then there's this new beginning, and the energy that you're exuding. And for you listeners that can't see her, I mean, not only does she look incredible, she looks, 15 years younger, and there's a halo of energy, a glow around her that is extraordinary. So you are just an extraordinary role model for going through those transition phases very quickly. And I don't know if you have any thoughts around what I just mentioned about those three phases at all, and to help others.
Well, it's very complimentary. And none of it was easy. I just think that I've always been a half glass full person.
Oh, you're
So
two glasses full. Who are you kidding? Always, maybe even three.
there's some folks who'd say, what is her glass full of? But anyway, they might ask that question. But I do think that there is there are definite steps to be taken, and I took them probably unconsciously because, again, I was just kind of thrust into it. Had I had planned for it, I don't know if I would have come out the same way, but because of the circumstances and that they were, I just kind of weaved my way through. um, but I do think, and I would ask you, so you said that you had some ego involved, and now, my question to you is, you said it took you 5 years, but I don't think it really took you that long. I think you're being a little hard on yourself because you've done many things since you've left the corporate life, quote unquote. So, what is it that you're finding in your research? Now you see how I turned it around on you?
Yeah, you
It's nice
did. You
job.
did. I know you said this to me earlier that this is a role reversal for you. So thanks for throwing me in the spotlight. Um, you know, it there's a couple things, and through the research that I've done with a wide variety of individuals in this phase of life, I have uncovered that there are 5 zones of influence, and I call them the 5 Ps. And what I have identified, which you just so eloquently put, the first one's around personal, and it's getting through the trials and tribulations of life and surviving. And you use the word resilience. So I would probably say that's part of the psychological zone. But you have this community of women that you mentioned that has been so instrumental, and that's the one thing that I have found as well, that my friends have truly made the story of my life. My friends are my family. And it doesn't mean I don't have family that I love and that I cherish and I spend time with, but that's one thing that I've found that's very similar to you, that have just been a rock through everything. The second is around health, and I call that physical and mental well-being. And I, similar to you, had some pretty precarious things that I had to deal with 6 years ago with heart disease that just threw me for a loop. And I just love that you, similar to I, were just like, all right, health first, because nothing else matters at this age. And so I've become very proactive and do a lot of functional medicine now that I've got my heart situation under control, not cured, but under control. So that's another that is, very similar to what you're doing. Um, the other one is psychological. And with you, you mentioned the glass is always 3 glasses full. And yes, we might not know what's in that glass, but there's something to be said around living in a love-based state versus a fear-based state. Our central nervous system can only handle 2 states and not at the same time. And when you're in fear, your central nervous system is really guiding any behaviors or decisions that you make. And what I'm hearing from you is that, you have been very loving to yourself because you have been selfish. And you're learning about the ability to make decisions that are really authentic when you're in that
Yes.
love-based state. Not to mention that you're also very growth minded and you don't let any grass grow underneath you. So, growth versus fixed minded. And especially now, since you are finding your health. And you're in that stage right now of finding your purpose, you reimagining what your purpose is, because similar to myself, my purpose was once 13 years ago to be a wife and a stepmother. I was also a professional in the corporate world, and I was a daughter, and then all of those things got ripped away from me, and so now I'm really learning about what I'm great at, what I love to do, and finding out what that niche is to help others. So I'm serving others. And you're in that phase right now, and it will not be long before I hear from you that this is what I'm going to do and where I'm going to do it. A- you want to make a comment?
Well, I was going to say, I think you've said it. That's terrific. It's exactly right. So I think trying to find out what that next thing is, and for everybody, it's different, right? It's tapping into that inner resource, that inner competency that you have that may have been shadowed, maybe it had been overlooked for a
Right.
while, but something that, and it's the joy of it. It's what makes you happy, and trying to figure that out can take a while because there are so many other competing pressures on you as you're going through all those life changes,
Yeah,
all the things that you went through. So, what bubbles to the surface at the end of it all? Like when your head
exactly.
comes up out of the, and you say, okay, what's bubbled up for me? Where do I find that joy? Where do I find that happiness? And sometimes it's having others help you find it, and sometimes you find it on your own. But it's always, it's something's there for everybody, and it's just a matter of identifying it. We talked about my mom and her journey through her health. I was very fortunate, or unfortunate. I want to say fortunate,
Yeah.
that I had a friend who was going through a very similar experience at the same time I was. And we would get on the phone every day and say, "Oh my gosh, this is what happened today." And she would go, "Oh my gosh, that happened to me yesterday." And she'd tell me how she managed it. And then the next day I would do the reverse. So we were managing a healthcare system together and trying to find out where these holes were. We knew there were a lot of holes, but how do you fix it? How do you build a bridge over some of this, because you're not getting the right patient reaction, you're not getting the attention that you need from the physicians and the nurses and the hospital system to help the person that you love the most in the world and who's suffering? And how do you figure that all out, and doing it on a daily basis, and calling in the CEO of the hospital and say, this is not right, and having that gumption and that nerve and that resolve, because you're fighting for somebody.
That's right.
And so that's something else that I've learned, that I can fight for somebody else. I'm a bad fighter for me, which is why I said selfish. And that shouldn't be a negative word. And I think that's the thing that I've also come to realize. Being selfish is not always a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's about learning who you are.
Mhm. I don't know if that made sense to you, but
It,
yes.
it totally did. It totally did. Um, and the fact that you were able to do that with someone else at the same time, I mean, it lends itself to say, if you're going through any of those challenges with your parents or a child or your loved one, your partner, there are people out there that have gone through it and may have some inside thoughts or just nuggets that might help you get through it a little bit easier. So, um,
Absolutely. And you asked me the other thing that I'm looking to lean into, and it is about one of the core things in my life is women, and helping women and figuring out how we navigate in this current climate, and the things that are being forced upon women. Really difficult right now for me, and I'm struggling with it. I have to be honest. I struggle every day with it, and I see what's happening out there. So I am trying to figure out where I can have an influence, where I can have an impact, where I can be of assistance. What can I do? So that's something that I'm working on a daily basis as well.
do you have anything you'd like to share about where your thoughts are, or maybe is there something on the horizon that you can tip us off to?
Not yet. Not
Oh,
yet.
okay. All right. Well, the minute you do, I want you back on the podcast and we can talk about that, because your efforts around women and leadership and development are heroic. And there's a handful of you that I know through the life sciences industry. But I just can't wait to hear where you end up putting your efforts, because whoever and whatever is the beneficiary of that will be extraordinary. So thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. I just hope it doesn't land me in jail, Cece.
No.
I'm kidding.
Well, there's a bunch of us that will bail you out. If I was
I
going to,
appreciate that.
yeah, if there was an investment to be made, I would definitely make it with you. And the last question I have for you is actually around place. And you have recently become a Floridian, which is, I think, giving you great joy, because I heard the word golf and outdoors and great weather. And can you just also mention how that has influenced this transition into your third?
Sure. Again, accidental Floridian, not a planned Floridian, an accidental Floridian, because
I see a movie
I,
coming on. Yeah.
yes, yes, I'm an accidental Floridian. And there's some navigating to be done down here as well with that. I also am on the younger side of the Floridian life. So I live in a 55 plus community, and I would say some of my, the peeps in my life down here, I call them lovingly my octos, because they're octogenarians that I now engage with on a regular basis through cards, through golf, or what have you. So finding that social structure down here has been a little bit challenging as well. So again, I'm trying to broaden my horizons. That's why I started playing golf. I started doing other things outside of my community and within my community as well, just to build up that friend base, if you will, because I moved down here to be a caretaker. I didn't move down here permanently. I came down for 3 weeks to help my mom through a transition, and I never left. So that meant I had to close up my life in Philadelphia where I was, and over the years, and that just was completed over the Christmas holiday that just passed. And so now I am down here full time, as I have been for the last 3 or 4 years. But finding that balance, so of, you know, again, I love my octos, but I don't like. I need other people who are my age too to do things with, because they're not always hip to be out at 9 o'clock at night when the sidewalks start to roll up. So
I was going to ask, what is your preferred dinner time now?
it's funny. It's true. You start to want to have dinner around 5:30. I
It's
don't know
true.
why that is.
Doesn't matter who you're with anymore.
It's such a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a
It's,
reason. I
it
don't know
is.
why.
It is. Well, Taren, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today, and your wisdom is just wonderful. And I mean, I have a whole list of things that you talked about today, but I want to just kind of end on the fact that you took care of your health first, and with that came the rest. And you also had this community of great friends that have been with you this entire time. So I hope that, the key takeaway for all of you listeners out there is that it's pretty easy to control how you deal with your health and who your friend group is. Not to mention being an accidental Floridian where your place is. And you do have an amazing personality of resilience and the cup always full. So I hope to have you back soon, and you can tell us all about jumping out of a plane and what you've learned from that. And most importantly, your efforts in women, which is where you are amazing, and can't wait to hear all about that. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Cece. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And I think what you're doing here is amazing. So I think you too, your story is tremendous. And I'm so glad you're sharing some of that through these interviews with everybody, because your pearls of wisdom are really terrific. And you brought to life for me your 5 Ps. And I love that. I read those and I thought, yes, go, Cece, go. So thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today.
Well, it's my pleasure as well. And for all of you out there, before we go, I just want to say this, that, transitions are hard. And letting go of who you were to figure out who you are now is a really big shift. And you're feeling uncertain or a little lost, you're not alone. But as Taren showed us, this is where something new begins. And it is just exhilarating to have those opportunities in front of us. Because when you understand who you really are, you do create that life of joy, fulfillment, and freedom. And you do not have to do it alone. So until next time, keep creating a life that feels meaningful to you. So thank you. Have a great day.